Hello there, On the Rocks listeners. It's Jess, your favorite geo nerd from Prospector here. Today, we are digging deep into ESG and the Responsible Mining Academy with Elizabeth Freele in just a minute. But first, are you in the mining industry and interested in joining Emily for an episode of On the Rocks? Curious about getting your message in front of our diverse listenership? Check out prospectorportal.com/sponsor to connect with our team and learn more about sponsorship opportunities. Today on the Rocks, we are excited to be joined by Elizabeth Freele, the managing partner of Sympact and co-founder of the Responsible Mining Academy. Elizabeth is a passionate mining sustainability strategist and social performance professional with a diverse business and interpersonal skill set, honed globally over 15 plus years in mining, as well as impact investing, renewable energy, ag tech, circular economy, and clean tech. As managing partner of Sympact Advisory and co-founder of the Responsible Mining Academy, she helps companies across the mining lifecycle cut through the noise on ESG and social performance with a focus on capability building and developing future-fit corporate responsibility and ESG risk management approaches. Before founding these enterprises, her in-house industry roles notably included companies such as Rocks Gold Inc. and Tech Resources. Grab yourself an energy drink or non-alcoholic beer, and let's dig in.
All right, Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us here on the Rocks. It's great to have you. And since it is kind of middle of the day, I know we're not doing it over a cocktail for those folks listening at home, but they can certainly pour a non-alcoholic drink or tea or coffee or whatever they'd like to have. But really excited to talk to you today because I know so much of your current initiatives and business are really driven by your personal background and how you started in the industry. So I wonder if you could kick it off by giving us a little bit of that story. How did what you went through when you joined the industry and what you learned lead you to where you are today?
Awesome. Okay. Well, yeah, first, thank you, Emily, for having me on the podcast. I'm a big fan. I really enjoy what you've been doing with it over the last couple of years. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
Um, let's start at the beginning, I guess. I think so. I did not go looking for mining. Mining found me, as I always like to say. I grew up globally with parents in healthcare. I always wanted an international life. I had, like, academically, I majored in global development, poli-sci, a bit of environment and gender studies along the way, and eventually my MBA. And mining found me along the way. It was not long after undergrad. I had a brief stint at a law firm. I was super unhappy. And I remember the first interview I had, it was, do you speak French and are you interested in Africa? And I'd never thought about the mining industry, but I'd heard about this concept of corporate social responsibility before. So we learned about it in the classroom, and it was introduced as this corporate greenwashing tool. But I always believed that it could be something more, right? That the idea of social responsibility in business could have a lot more potential. And mining gave me that chance. So I started out in community relations. With a small American manganese junior in Burkina Faso and Mali. And over time, broader CSR roles, ended up leading the sustainability function of a gold junior in Burkina Faso, which is where I think I'd say I really got my legs in the industry. Ended up on Bay Street when our project got IFC funded. And that was this really special moment for me because all these things I was so passionate about doing were suddenly covenanted, right? So you had investors actually asking about environmental and social performance and risk management. So that was a meaningful moment in my own path. My last in-house gig was at Tech Resources, and that's where I met my current business partner, Rachel Decker. We founded our consulting firm, Sympact, in late 2020, and that was based on this mutual passion that we share to keep helping this industry, but without the constraints of being inside a mining company. And the timing was fortuitous because sustainability, ESG, social performance were all suddenly super hot. And as we grew, we realized that virtually every mandate that we were taking on, every client call had some kind of capability building component, which we loved because we were kind of coming from the perspective of there's no point bringing in a consultant to do a thing and then they just leave you hanging, right? We want to see mining companies succeed. We want to see them do it for themselves. but we realized that's quite hard to scale. You can only be in so many corporate offices or sites in person. I was living on the road full time for 2.5 years up until late last year, and it's just not sustainable. So we've been keen to find a way, how do we digitalize some aspect of our specialized work? And that led to the foundation of the Responsible Mining Academy, which I guess we can talk a little bit about today, because we realized, this was probably where we could have the most impact, especially because of the way COVID helped the mining industry come around to a level of remote work and digital adoption that other industries were already doing, that forced us to do so as well.
Yeah, and I wonder, how much have you seen in just the last year? It seems like there's been a bit of this swing back or kind of pushback on ESG and DEI. Like, how has the Responsible Mining Academy
Yeah.
kind of helped accommodate maybe some of those changes in corporate interest?
Mm. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that because it's always kind of the elephant in the room, right? Um, and I'm like super happy to lean into the question. It's so important, and I'm quite passionate about it. I think there has been, first of all, I think the anti-ESG movement is just. I think there's a lot wrong with how ESG has been popularized, how it has been hijacked, particularly in North America, by both extremes of the political spectrum, each for their own gain. It's just been so politicized, and like I'm quite passionate about cutting through that noise. And what we're trying to do with our signature course in the Responsible Mining Academy is bring the conversation back to what ESG was always supposed to be about, which is meaningful risk management and responsible business.
Yeah.
ESG was always about risk management. And so that notion's not new, especially in an industry like ours. The reality is environmental and social trends have implications on organizational resilience, on operational performance. And I would say in mining, more than a lot of industries, we have known that for a long time.
Yeah.
Especially folks who've worked in so-called high-risk jurisdictions. That's not a new concept.
Yeah.
So we're all about kind of bringing it back to that conversation and distinguishing between sustainability and corporate sustainability and ESG. And what we find is a lot of the time when we speak about it in those terms, it kind of cools any of those politics. And the same thing with EDI. Like, we can't afford to not expand the talent pool.
Right.
Period.
Yeah. And Elizabeth, I was wondering then, when you look at that difference between kind of what people think about in terms of corporate ESG, DEI, all the acronym policies, right? There's a difference between what can be implemented at a corporate level also and the actual policies that go into the work that's performed, like on the ground, especially with mining, right? There's difference there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so maybe you could tell us a little bit about the Responsible Mining Academy. What is it and what did you set out to do with it?
So it is an online platform. So to be honest, we thought we were creating a course and we ended up basically building another company off the side of our desks. So it's been a hectic couple of years in that regard. But basically what happened is we were trying to scale the knowledge building work that we were already doing at Sympact in so many of our mandates, as we saw that more and more people are interested in this topic, around the mining ecosystem. ESG keeps being ranked as a top risk. We know, most institutional investors are considering ESG now. Dozens of countries are mandating sustainability-related due diligence, disclosure. But what's been shocking to us is seeing how many senior executives and board members, when asked in anonymous surveys, actually say that they're not fully confident in their company's ESG risk readiness. They don't feel equipped to provide real oversight on this area. And so, what we felt we could do is take all this training that we've been doing through our advisory mandates and basically create an online offering. So, we're not trying to replace academic experience. We're not trying to create deep ESG experts. What this is supposed to be is an online knowledge sharing platform by the industry for the industry,
Mhm.
practitioner to practitioner, something that is self-paced. It's at your fingertips, so you can do it from your office, from your home, from your camp bed, wherever you can stream video. And I talked a bit about my own journey earlier on, and what I didn't really discuss was how much of that journey was so lonely because of it being, I had to learn as I went. And so I can't tell you the number of nights I sat there, like in our camp, just sitting in my bed and trying to find whatever PDFs or websites on the internet where I could learn what is it that we're supposed to be doing to become the kind of mining company and build the kind of mine that we envision. And so kind of trying to help folks at the top on the one hand, build the ESG competencies to provide the oversight and the resources necessary to meaningfully manage this risk, but also, help the little guy who's at site who can't go to the short courses at the conferences on the other side of the world, for example, right? You're so busy doing your job every day, you don't have the time, you don't have the resource, or the company doesn't. But we can bring this to you anywhere that you can stream video. So that's been, a big part of, I think, the vision and what we're trying to do. And so the challenge we put to ourselves was, how do we create something that is engaging, that is an interactive user experience, and that is framed by knowledge about best practice versus, representing the interests of a particular organization or only focusing on a particular standard. And so what that meant is we essentially captured the expectations of all the major environmental and social standards in the industry and tried to create a bit of a 101 for folks who are increasingly finding ESG or some element of ESG being a part of their daily lives.
Yeah, and so I wonder what parts of the mining companies have you seen this kind of pick up traction with? Is it folks that are operating in those maybe higher risk jurisdictions or the corporate level? Is there anywhere where you've been surprised at the level of interest?
You know what? It's an incredibly mixed bag. Um, we've had folks working in many different jurisdictions, and uh, that's part of the interest, to be honest. So it's mostly self-paced, but we also have an option to join in live sessions with the instructors where we work through case studies together. And so the other people in the virtual room, so to speak, are coming in different time zones in a different part of the world. And, you might have someone who's phoning in from Ghana with someone from Finland, someone who's in the outback in Australia, and someone sitting in northern British Columbia in the Golden Triangle. And what cool conversations we can see them have, and the perspectives that they bring also from the different roles that they play.
Yeah.
One thing we'd like to see more, we've been encouraged to think about, is other aspects of the mining ecosystem. So in particular, folks in the midstream, investors, lawyers, so people who are in and around mining companies where we are seeing environmental and social due diligence or liability growing, basically. And I think what's probably worth mentioning is that there's tons of ESG courses out there, right? The first thing people often ask is, well, why this course? Like, why wouldn't I go to an accredited institution or whatever? I think it comes back to, we're just practitioners trying to help other practitioners. We're living and breathing this every day. Because this is such a hot topic, we're seeing so much more content come out there.
Sure.
The vast majority, they're industry agnostic, so it can only take you so deep. And a lot are taught by people who've never lived this with their boots on the ground in an industry like this. It feels quite different from, like I say, a typical consumer facing, that like fast moving consumer goods or something kind of industry.
Yeah. No, I think that's where you and I both share in common, having worked in a lot of emerging and frontier markets, right? Where, again, it's back then. Well, I think when I first started doing exploration work and working with the industry, it was in, kind of 2009, 2010, and it was called corporate social responsibility, right? CSR.
Yeah.
That, and then it, kind of not that it just transitioned to ESG, but the kind of focus reoriented into ESG. And I just remember thinking, I was like, well, it really isn't anything separate than just like what you have to do to be successful when you're doing this. Like it was so strange to me to hear that there was like a whole focus on it as like a separate skill set almost, where it was like, well, how could you ever do exploration, at least in kind of my situation, in some of these countries, if you weren't applying this kind of risk management, risk assessment skill set?
Yeah, 100%. And, we think about being able to offer an exploration specific version of the course in the future. Like being in an exploration site is or campus is very different experience than an operating mine. But what we've tried to do in the meantime is build something that can speak to the full project lifecycle, where say if you are in exploration, you can see what's coming down the line, and there is a value in that too. Speaking out, well, this is what it looks like in exploration, this is what it might look like, or challenges you might face during construction development, and here's what good looks like in ops, and here's what the leading companies are doing. If you're already doing everything we're talking about, you might want to think about XYZ as well.
Yeah, no, and especially because one thing that I always remind folks of is like local communities in particular, but also the actual individual people, but also the companies that are in that community, the policymakers that are in that community. Typically, their first exposure to our industry is a crazy exploration geologist who's wandering around looking for something cool, right? Like you don't have like you don't have Newmont just show up in your neighborhood and you've never had anybody come in and look at the area before, right? That's not like a typical experience for a community. It's crazy geos wandering around. Oh, I think there's gold. And like how they communicate and how they implement ESG, first of all, can really set the tone for a community's expectations, really throughout that whole development process, all the way up in foreign jurisdictions, or kind of, I mean, I guess technically every jurisdiction is foreign, but like in emerging markets where maybe they don't have as much experience with mining development, that crazy geologist is meeting with the Minister of Mines and Minister of Finance and all of that. So I would love to see what you all are thinking of putting together on that side, because it's usually SGOs that create a lot of the
No, I hear you. Especially when it's like, oh yeah, we're going to put forward the geo who's, quote, good with people.
Right.
And like, cannot tell you the number of times and like, oh no, we got community relations covered, government relations covered. Like we put so-and-so on it. He's good with people. It's like, oh dear, oh dear. That's like, yes, that's important. But community relations, social performance, social risk management, social performance practitioners love to harp on about how it is a technical discipline. There are specific tools that we ought to be using, but there's still quite limited opportunities or offerings out there where someone in this industry can go and learn it. So, for example, one that I quite like is CSRM at the University of Queensland. They have a community relations exploration course that they run from time to time. That's fantastic if you can access that online when they're doing their sessions. Right. A couple of the bigger companies are developing entire internal learning management system social performance offerings, which is also great, but it still leaves a lot of the industry unserved today.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. And I wonder, as a fellow entrepreneur, you mentioned you had to self-learn a lot of this. What kinds of things did you have to what kinds of things did you have to teach yourself as you were going through this development process with the academy?
The academy. Oh my goodness, where to begin? Well, I'd never hosted like like an education platform before. So a few years ago, there were a couple of names. Now there's dozens. So like, how does one even choose which white label offering you're going to use to put all your content on? Another thing I didn't appreciate was the process of content production. So, we spent months writing scripts, and every single thing had to be fact checked and sourced. We created like a resource library of over 400 resources in back of it. So if you don't believe what Liz tells you on this video, you can go and check, where that info came from. And then this entire process of post-production to basically cut, I don't even remember, like hundreds of hours of film into a comprehensive 7.5 hour video offering split into 41 different lessons or something like that, 40 something. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, a lot about media, I would say, that was foreign to me. We're subject matter experts. I don't know how to run a tech platform. I don't know how to automate anything. Even getting in front of a camera in itself and not like feeling like an idiot is a skill to learn in time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I think that's such a great point, and especially coming in from the advisory or the consulting side, right? Where you're really thinking about, direct engagement and kind of like on a deliverable or an hourly type basis, right? That's so different from delivering a product that
totally. Going from service to product, it's like a world apart. And again, not having done it before, and also having no idea, like, how do you sell or do BD on a digital product?
Oh yeah.
Like, we're still figuring that out. We're so proud of the product we have here. Like, everyone who's been taking it has been like, they had wonderful things to say. It's so heartwarming. But we're like, how do we get this in front of people? Because again, that's not our field of expertise.
Yeah. No, like I had to learn all about like what is marketing. I've had to for product marketing and HubSpot, customer relationship management systems, like all of these different tools that are completely different. Well, having gone through a bit of a similar process, very different product, of course, and development approach in terms of what we built out. But what have you thought or taken away in terms of what you've learned about the mining industry by trying to introduce or, launching this new baby kind of out into the world? Have you come away with any kind of big picture thoughts on the industry and where it's headed and where it needs to focus, perhaps?
I've been a bit surprised at the difference between what the data says around how equipped people feel on the subject matter versus like the unwillingness to take action when you're like talking to an individual, right? Like, I think ego and pride are really powerful forces that like we all have, right? To say I don't know, or to say like I'm scared, or like I don't feel equipped, that takes a lot of courage, and so I think that's still a bit of a hurdle. People who are like, oh yeah, I know ESG. Well, like, I'm sorry, but like, even a lot of people running sustainability in your companies don't know ESG. We don't know what we don't know. And so the part of our challenge is, how do we get that base level of awareness? Well, actually, there is something that you still would benefit from learning, depending on your role, that would really help you do things better. And people aren't going to make a purchase decision until they believe that, until they believe there's something to learn. And the other thing is just, everyone is so busy these days. I know we've always been busy, but I swear that since the pandemic, our inability to distinguish like work-life balance is worse than it ever has been. Like, I feel burnt out all the time, and I realize it's not me. I have conversation after conversation where it seems like everyone I'm speaking to feels the same way. We're all struggling with those boundaries, with having enough time off, and with doing the job that is our day-to-day job without thinking about, oh yeah, I'd like to take a course.
Right.
Your plates are so full already.
One more thing to add to the list, right? Is I'm sure what I'm up against. Yeah, no, I think certainly I was surprised at the difference in articulated need, like what companies and individuals say priorities are within the industry and concerns within the industry, but then actually like what they action, and specifically what they action with budgets, like what they then are actually spend money, right? And I find it fascinating, especially coming at it from a technology like innovation angle, because so much is talked about in needing that, right? Innovation in the way the industry uses technology and data, pulls in things from other industries, all of that great stuff. And similarly, like how much the industry talks about the importance of ESG and doing ESG different and integrating it at every level. And I've come to start to ask folks when I first chat with them, so what percentage of your department or group's budget is set aside for those types of priorities? And oftentimes, first of all, the people that make the decisions are totally two different groups of people. But I think it's a real thing that the industry has to sort out is, the industry as a whole, and the companies need to start to put their budgets where they say their priorities are, or it's just going to continue to be in this cycle, right, of always being a little bit behind.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And again, it sounds like from your experience you're describing, there's also this like they need to see and believe in the value.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this, I think there's a reticence around making like budgetary decisions. Talk is cheap.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's also in such an expertise-driven industry. I think I've read a lot about like technology adoption and where the challenges are in larger organizations, where like, why do you kind of have challenges getting different organizations to adopt new technology or new, ways of dealing with data and information? And, folks get to a certain level, especially within a large organization, because they are an expert at doing things in one way. Right. And that could be a geologist, a mining engineer, a social engagement professional, right? You have gotten to that level because you are an expert at doing it this way and in this scenario. And it's a big challenge to try to go to that expert and say, oh, yeah, but I've got something that you don't know.
They're like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and it's, and I put myself in their shoes and I'm like, yeah, I can certainly understand that. You've got 50 million things to do on your to-do list and people to manage. And all of those plans are according to one way of doing things and one kind of technical infrastructure, data infrastructure, people infrastructure. So that disruption, while it's talked about a lot, is really uncomfortable for folks and not typically appealing.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Like even with with the Responsible Mining Academy and the online education piece, I often think about my MBA number of years ago was super focused on disruption, innovation, technology. I did not know originally that that's what I was signing up for. But there's this narrative always in the back of my mind. And when I came back to mining, I didn't want to. I was like, man, these places, like, there's so many cool things happening in all these other industries, and then there's mining, right?
Yeah.
Like they'll talk about this stuff a little bit, but they're not taking action. And in the meantime, you see like at this exponential pace, technology wildly changing other industries, and we're being left behind. And with the example of education, I would say we see it as well. Knowledge sharing, knowledge building has been in this disruptive moment for years already. Like it's not new, and yet the number of times I'm like, hey, by the way, like we have this new academy, and the client will be like, oh, can you do just like a Teams call, or can you come to site and like do it in person with us?
Right. Yeah. No, and it's one of the things that I think is again, I'm interested to hear that from other founders and entrepreneurs in our industry, because I hear such a common theme with other founders and kind of innovators or entrepreneurs. And I've joked a few times on social media, like I'm just going to start a self-help group or a mining entrepreneurs and so we can all kind of commiserate. But it's I mean, again, it's our job to solve, right, ultimately, because we're the ones that want to win the business and do the work with the company. So it's not a complaining thing, but for me, I wonder how much of that same kind of internal DNA within companies is also affecting other parts of the business that the industry says it wants to improve and innovate, right? So everyone talks about wanting to do discovery more efficiently. Everybody talks about, needing to manage companies differently to improve shareholder value, right? And return value back to shareholders that have invested in them. Everybody in the industry complains about the lack of non-traditional capital coming into the mining space, right? That people just aren't, the money's not coming in, even though we all know how important we are, right? And that there's this big gap. But how many of those same like institutional, bureaucratic DNA challenges are making those problems also remain endemic to the industry, right? If you can't take a chance on a new training platform or a new data platform, how are you really as an organization taking a chance on a new discovery approach,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or on a new way to deliver shareholder value. Like if you can't do it small, can you really do it big?
And how
That's
can you expect the non-traditional investor to be taking a chance on you if you won't take a chance on anything? It's
right.
kind of,
Yeah, no, and I
yeah,
mean, non-traditional investors in our sector are people that are investing in technology and other industries that are much more open to disruption, innovation. They're trying new things. Those are the people we want to attract to the industry, right? So we've got
yeah,
to do the things that those
yeah,
other industries do where appropriate.
yeah. No, I agree with you very much. It's crucial.
hmm And I think that's where, from an ESG perspective, I think you're so spot on. It's about risk management, and mining is really all about reducing risk in different ways and at different levels, right? And if we're going to
Yeah.
communicate that, we've got to hit it on all those levels.
No, I agree. And it's a dangerous time at the moment. And you know, you said earlier about where people put their budget, and one of the most frustrating things that I see is the number of folks that are putting um, their budgets into creating new sustainability reporting roles
Mm,
instead of creating roles for
mm,
sustainability innovation, sustainability management, so on and so forth. So every time you put more money towards reporting and disclosure, that's
yeah,
a dollar that's not going towards the real action and the real change, which is at the heart of why folks are asking for all this data in the first place. It's not
right.
actually because they want to report; it's because they want to know the risks are being managed. Um, so, like as someone who works with tech platforms and data, I think you would probably appreciate there's this immense opportunity if we can apply some of these technological innovations to sustainability data management, which right now, such a busy space, like so many startups, like let's see how the cards fall eventually. But might that, make room through
Yeah,
efficiencies for a bit more resource for the action piece,
for the actual work that needs to be done.
the doing of ESG.
Yeah. Well, with that, that's a great lead in, Elizabeth, to, our typical, or the question I ask everybody at the end of each episode, if you could just wave a magic wand over the mining industry and not have to deal with any of the repercussions or the challenges associated with it, if it magically happened overnight, what would you change about the industry?
Probably something very idealistic. I think some people hate this, but I'll say it anyway. I would eliminate the phrase, we just need to tell our story better.
Yeah.
And I would replace it with an unwavering business ethos that is founded on the golden rule, like treat others as we want to be treated. You think about how you would want folks to behave if you let them into your backyard. I think, like coming from a social performance and community relations background, so much comes down to the number of folks who don't treat others as they'd like to be treated. We don't all treat other people's backyards as if they were our own. And as we were talking about like earlier, it's uncomfortable to confront failings, shortcomings, change, disrupt our way of thinking, whether as individuals or as organizations. So with that, I would imbue our industry's leadership with the courage to face the reasons for the trust deficit we have, for the social acceptability challenges, those that are in our control, because obviously not all of them are, and I 100% recognize that. But we have real ongoing challenges with social responsibility, with environmental stewardship, and that courage means holding ourselves accountable and holding each other accountable within the
Mhm.
broader mining ecosystem. Every time there's another crappy headline of a dam disaster or a human rights violation, corruption scandal, it's devastating to the folks who are working so hard to do their best, to be better, to be more, to heal mining's image. But we're all brought down to the lowest common denominator. So that courage to hold one another accountable, I think, is probably the thing I would sprinkle all over with the magic wall.
No, I love that. And I'm with you on getting rid of that phrase because, on our team, we hear that a lot. And my pet peeve is, you're not going to get a different narrative until you do things differently. Right. So
That's
the
it.
do comes first. The reputation comes after.
Yeah.
I also,
Yeah.
that's where I've always thought about it in terms of the scouting philosophy of leave the campsite cleaner than you found it, right? It's not just
Mm-hmm.
do
Mm-hmm.
it's actually leave everything better than when you went in there. That we need to aim for, not just don't F it up.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And like, and if
Let's
folks don't know what to do, that's again like what we're trying to do with the academy is like if you get to the point where you realize it's about the doing, it's about the action, and you don't know where to start, like let us help you. We'll tell you what good looks like.
Yeah.
Like it's out there. Yeah, that information, that support is out there. If you want it, we
Yeah.
can be more.
It's just a little bit tougher than making a nice, pretty report. So, right.
Just
Yeah.
a little bit.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us, and look forward to having you back on, and really hope that it goes well with the new platform.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Great to chat, Emily.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of On the Rocks. For a limited time only, On the Rocks listeners get a special discount to the Responsible Mining Academy. You can go to responsiblemIning.academy and use discount code OnTheRocks10 on any course. We encourage you to check the opportunity out. This season of On the Rocks, we are excited to bring new opportunities to the show. We are now accepting episode sponsorships. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor or making a guest appearance, get in touch with us at prospectorportal.com/sponsor. We have so many great guests coming on this season, and we cannot wait to share the episodes with you, so stay tuned. Of course, follow us on social media or subscribe to the Weekly Nugget to be alerted when new episodes are out.